Danish cuisine. Denmark is the southernmost and most agricultural of the Nordic countries, a flat, wind-swept landscape of farms, beech forests, and a coastline broken into hundreds of islands. Pork has been central to Danish farming for centuries. The country produces more pigs than people, and pork appears in nearly every traditional dish. The dish that opens any account of Danish food is smørrebrød, the open-faced sandwich. A slice of dense rye bread called rugbrød is buttered and layered carefully. Pickled herring with onion and capers, thin slices of roast beef with crisp fried onions and remoulade, breaded fried plaice with lemon or leverpostage, a warm pork liver patty. It is eaten with a knife and fork, never picked up. The rye bread underneath defines the character of Danish eating, sour, heavy, and packed with whole grains and seeds. Denmark's love of pork runs through everything. Flæskesteg, roast pork with crackling, is the classic Sunday and Christmas roast, scored deeply so the rind blisters into crisp sheets, served with red cabbage and brown sauce potatoes. Frikadeller, pan-fried pork and veal meatballs, are an everyday staple eaten with potatoes and gravy. Stegt flæsk med persillesauce, fried slices of pork belly with parsley sauce and boiled potatoes, is regularly named the national dish. Wienerbrød, literally meaning Vienna bread, is the laminated pastry the English-speaking world calls Danish. It was brought to Denmark by Austrian bakers in the 19th century, hence the name. At Christmas, the kitchens produce æbleskiver, spherical pancakes cooked in a dimpled pan and dusted with sugar, served with jam and warm spiced wine. A summer table ends with rødgrød med fløde, a thick red berry compote of strawberries and currants served with cream. Swedish cuisine. Swedish cuisine is built around the idea of husmanskost, plain home cooking grounded in what the land and sea provided. Its global ambassador is köttbullar, small meatballs of beef and pork served with cream gravy, boiled potatoes, lingonberry jam, and pickled cucumber. The pairing of savory meat with tart sweet lingonberry appears throughout Swedish food, the berry growing wild across the forests and gathered in vast quantities. The other pillar is herring. Sill, pickled herring, is cured in dozens of styles: mustard, onion, dill, and appears on every festive table. Surströmming, herring fermented until it builds pressure inside the can, is among the most pungent foods in the world, eaten in the north of Sweden with thin bread, potato, and onion. Sweden gave the world the smørrebrød, a spread of cold and hot dishes eaten in a set sequence, beginning with herring and fish, moving to cold meats, then warm dishes. Fika, a daily pause for coffee and something sweet, is a fixed part of daily life. Its signature is the kanelbulle, a cardamom-scented cinnamon bun. Around midsummer, the kræftskiver fills tables with crayfish boiled in dill and salt, eaten by hand. For the winter holidays, lutfisk, dried whitefish soaked in lye until it turns to a soft jelly, is served as a traditional Christmas dish. A long-standing weekly custom is ærtsuppe med pannekaker, yellow pea soup with pork, followed by thin pancakes, eaten on Thursdays in homes, schools, and the military since before the Reformation. Among everyday dishes, ragmunk, crisp potato pancakes fried in butter and served with fried pork and lingonberry, and pittipanna, a hash of diced potato, onion, and leftover meat topped with a fried egg and beetroot, fill the home table. Norwegian cuisine. Norway is defined by its geography. The fjords cutting inland between steep mountains gave rise to fishing communities that lived in relative isolation for centuries, developing distinct local traditions around whatever the sea and the limited farmable land could provide. Its oldest export is turfisk, cod hung on wooden racks in the cold coastal air until it dries hard as wood, a trade that built medieval Norwegian towns and still supplies markets as far as the Mediterranean. The salted and dried version is klippfisk, the base of many international dishes including Portuguese bacalhau. From dried cod comes lutefisk, rehydrated in lye to a translucent, gelatinous texture and eaten at Christmas. Fresh salmon and trout are cured into gravlax, packed in salt, sugar, and dill, and served thinly sliced with a sweet mustard sauce. Inland, Norwegian food turns to lamb and game. Fårikål, mutton, and cabbage, layered with peppercorns and simmered for hours, is the national dish, cooked in autumn when the sheep come down from the mountains. Pinnekjøtt, salted and dried lamb ribs steamed over birch branches, is the Christmas meal of the West Coast. One of the country's most distinctive products is brunost, a brown whey cheese cooked until the milk sugars caramelize into a sweet, fudge-like block sliced thin onto bread or waffles. Rakfisk, trout salted and fermented for months, is eaten cured and raw. Everyday cooking centers on kjøttkaker, large meat patties of beef simmered in brown gravy with potatoes, peas, and lingonberry, distinct from the smaller Swedish meatballs. For dessert, Multicreme, cloudberries folded into whipped cream, is the classic Christmas sweet, the berries gathered from mountain bogs and sold in small quantities due to their rarity. The soft flatbread lefse, made from potatoes, flour, and butter, is rolled thin and cooked on a dry griddle, eaten plain with butter or wrapped around fillings. Finnish cuisine. It sits between Scandinavian and Eastern European traditions with a strong Russian influence in the east. More than any other Nordic country, Finland relies on freshwater fish from over 100,000 lakes, game, mushrooms gathered in the forest in late summer, and berries that grow in such abundance that they make up a significant part of the national diet. Its most recognizable food is the Karjalan piirakka, the Karelian pasty, a thin rye crust folded around rice porridge and baked, then topped with munavoi, a mix of chopped egg and butter. Ruisleipä, dense, sour rye bread, is eaten at nearly every meal, sometimes baked with a hole in the center so loaves could be hung on poles to store. Lihapulle, Finnish meatballs, and makara, grilled sausage eaten at the summer cottage, are everyday staples. The summer cottage tradition is central to Finnish summer life, and grilling makara over an open fire at the edge of a lake is part of that tradition. Kalakukko, a loaf of rye dough baked around fish and pork until it forms a sealed bread pie, comes from the Savonia region and keeps for travel. From Lapland comes the food of the Sami, centered on poronkaristis, sautéed reindeer, served with mashed potato and lingonberry. A summer tradition is rapujuhlat, the crayfish feast shared with Sweden. Laupäjuusto, also known as bread cheese, is an integral part of Finnish cheese and food culture. It is baked until it browns and served warm with cloudberry jam. At Easter comes memi, a dark baked pudding of rye flour and malt, sweetened slowly during long baking and eaten cold with cream and sugar. Icelandic cuisine. Iceland is the most volcanically active country in the world, and its geology shaped its cuisine in ways unique to the island. Geothermal heat from beneath the surface was historically used to cook food directly in the ground, a method still occasionally demonstrated today. Since Iceland is a treeless volcanic island where almost nothing grew, survival depended on fishing and sheep farming. Likewise, food preservation became extremely important because of these conditions. Hakarl, Greenland shark buried and fermented for weeks then hung to dry for months, is edible only after the toxic flesh breaks down and remains one of the most challenging foods in the region. Hardfiskur, wind-dried fish torn into strips and eaten with butter, is the everyday version of the same logic. Sheep provided the rest. Hangikjöt, smoked lamb served at Christmas, and svid, a singed and boiled sheep's head eaten whole. The Icelandic dairy tradition produced skyr, a thick cultured product, technically a fresh cheese but eaten like yogurt, made in Iceland for over 1,000 years and now sold worldwide. A staple of modern Icelandic cuisine is the pilsur, a lamb-based hot dog topped with raw and fried onions, sweet brown mustard, and remoulade. It is considered the country's unofficial fast food and is sold at kiosks that stay open late into the night. North Atlantic cuisine. The Faroe Islands, an archipelago of 18 islands exposed to North Atlantic weather between Norway and Iceland, developed one of the most distinctive preservation cultures in the region. The climate is too wet for drying fish in the open air, so the Faroes built hjallar, slatted wooden sheds open to the wind, where meat and fish hang to dry slowly in the damp soil air. The result is skerpikjöt, wind-dried fermented mutton with a strong fermented flavor. Rest, the Faroes' word for this semi-fermented wind-dried state, applies to fish, lamb, and seabird, and this flavor is particular to Faroes cooking. In Greenland, the food of the Inuit centers on seal, whale, and fish eaten in ways shaped by an Arctic environment with no agriculture, where marine animal fat provided essential nutrition and energy through the long winter.